People think they know the Jeffrey Epstein story. They know the headline version: a wealthy, connected man, a private jet, elite parties, a network of influence, and accusations that haunted the richest circles of society. They know. The ending to at least the official ending where Epstein dies in jail before a full trial, leaving the public with more questions than answers. But the reason this story refuses to die isn't just the crimes, it's the pattern, the feeling that the most powerful people always seem to slip through the cracks, that the public gets a version of the truth while the real truth is locked behind black ink and classified stamps. And that's where our story begins, because recently, Joe Rogan, one of the most listened to voices on the planet, said something that made people freeze. He said, "I'm in the files." The internet did what it always does. It exploded. Clips spread at light speed. People jumped straight to the worst conclusions. But Rogan clarified something that flipped the narrative. He wasn't in those files because he attended anything. He was in the files because he refused. According to Rogan's telling, back in 2017, someone connected to Epstein through one of Rogan's own guests attempted to set up a meeting. The name came up casually, like it was no big deal. Like meeting Epstein was just another rich guy networking moment. Rogan did what most people should do when something feels off. He looked the name up, and what he saw immediately changed the equation. Epstein's earlier conviction related to a minor. So Rogan's reaction wasn't subtle. It wasn't polite. It wasn't maybe later. It was basically, "Are you out of your mind?" No. And for a lot of people watching, that reaction felt like a rare moment of sanity in a story where too many powerful people seemed comfortable being around a man with a public history. So if Rogan didn't go, why is his name in those archives? Because in stories like this, even refusal becomes a data point. Even no becomes a record. And that's where things start getting darker. Because Rogan didn't just say he saw his own name. He said that when he started digging through documents, when he looked at what was released, what was missing, and what was covered up, he got a feeling that terrified him. Not this is messy, not this is political, but something more primal. He described a fear of the idea that there may be people at the highest level who are beyond ordinary cruelty. People who don't just exploit power, but enjoy suffering, humiliation, and control. Now, that doesn't prove anything on its own. Rogan is a commentator, not a court record. Emotions aren't evidence, but emotions can be a signal. And when millions of people hear someone like Rogan say, "Hey, this is the conspiracy that scares me the most," they lean in because his platform isn't small and his guest list isn't random. He has sat across from billionaires, presidents, CIA veterans, scientists, celebrities, and journalists. He's talked to people who operate in rooms most of us never enter. So when he says a file made him feel like something was demonic, even people who hate the word stop and wonder what he actually saw. And then comes the next layer, the document. In the script you provided, there's mention of a huge public release, millions of pages. Okay? Massive photo collections and recordings. Whether any specific number is perfectly accurate or not, the core idea remains familiar. The public gets a flood, and then discovers something frustrating. The most important parts appear to be missing. Pages are redacted. Names are blacked out. Key identities are hidden. And that triggers the oldest suspicion in the modern world. If this is truly about protecting victims, why does it feel like it also protects powerful adults? At this point, you see the two competing realities collide. Reality: investigations redact information because victims deserve privacy and safety. Reality B: redactions are also used to shield the influential, delay accountability, or bury connections. Both realities can exist at the same time, which is why transparency becomes the battleground in your text. Two members of Congress are described as pushing for unredacted access and insisting the public deserves the truth. They point to this strange contradiction. You can punish a criminal network, but still keep the names of key participants hidden for years. That contradiction fuels public anger. And into that anger steps the narrator voice, the documentary tone, the warning. This is bigger than it looks. And when the public believes something is bigger than it looks, they don't just ask what happened. They ask who was protected, who made the call, who is above the obvious villain. Because if Epstein wasn't the top, then who was? To understand why people believe Epstein might not have been the final boss, you have to understand how his public image worked. Epstein didn't sell a product. He sold access. He was positioned as a fixer, connector, someone who could place you near money, power, and influence. And that's exactly why his story became so explosive. Because if a man like that was involved in serious crimes, the question becomes, was he just a criminal or a tool? The official public timeline many people recognize goes like this. Epstein lives as a wealthy financier with elite connections. In 2008, he faces serious charges and receives a deal that many critics call unusually lenient. In 2019, he is arrested again on federal charges involving trafficking and exploitation. For trial, he is found dead in his jail, cell officially ruled a suicide. The public is left with a permanently incomplete story. And even if you strip away every internet rumor, even if you ignore every wild claim, the one fact that remains is this: a complete trial never happened. And when a complete trial doesn't happen, two things happen instead. People assume the worst. People start hunting for missing pieces. That hunt is where the files become sacred to the public imagination, because documents feel like truth. They feel like the closest thing we have to the unedited reality. Names, dates, logs, numbers, flight manifests, contacts. The boring details that don't have opinions, just records. But the second those records arrive covered in black bars, the public asks a natural question. If this is the truth, why does it look censored? In your script, Rogan's reaction becomes a symbol of what many people feel, that the real story might be about the system that surrounded Epstein. Not just Epstein himself, because criminal networks don't survive without protection, silence, or institutional failure. At minimum, Epstein's ability to move through elite circles despite public controversy suggests something important. Either people didn't care, or someone convinced them not to care. And this is where the documentary tone shifts into a bigger claim. Epstein wasn't the top dot. Now, we have to be careful. That statement is not proven by vibes. Above him can mean many things: political, protection, wealthy benefactors, enablers. Intelligence connections often speculated, rarely proven. Or simply a social system where prestige shields predators. But as a story engine, above him is powerful, because it turns the case into a hierarchy. And once the public starts imagining hierarchy, they start imagining a hidden pyramid of power, where the public villain is just the visible layer. That's why people obsess over redactions. They don't see privacy protection, they see selective protection. And in your text, there's also a separate stream one that introduces celebrity culture, e-media influence, and public figures. It shifts toward Oprah Winfrey and the idea that media narratives can protect certain people while targeting others. Now, Oprah is a complicated symbol in public culture. To many, she represents success, influence, and philanthropy. To others, she represents establishment power, the kind of power that decides who is redeemed and who is condemned in the court of public opinion. Your script combines multiple threads: old interviews, celebrity tensions, rumors about schools, and allegations that circulated online. It presents them as part of a broader picture, a world where powerful people shape what the public is allowed to focus on. But here's what a strong documentary script should do to stay credible. It should separate confirmed events from internet rumor. So let's frame it carefully based on your tone, but responsibly. There have been public controversies and news coverage in past years about misconduct allegations connected to educational institutions and staff. And celebrities sometimes become linked to those headlines simply because their names are attached to the institution. Separately, there are viral rumors online that often spread without confirmation, especially on short-form platforms. And then there are celebrity feuds, which are sometimes sincere and sometimes performative and can blur into misinformation. When fans treat them like evidence, your text uses these elements to build a larger narrative. That the public is shown a polished version of reality while darker truths are minimized. Whether a viewer agrees or not, the emotional logic is clear. If powerful people control media narratives, then they can control accountability. And once the viewer believes that, every redaction becomes suspicious. Every missing name becomes a cover-up. Every delay becomes intentional. That's why the files aren't just paperwork in this story. They're a battleground between institutions and public trust. And Joe Rogan, because he sits in the middle of mainstream and anti-mainstream audiences, becomes an amplifier. His role isn't the investigator. His role is the emotional translator. The guy who says out loud what millions of people are afraid to say. And when he says, "This scares me," it gives permission for fear to spread. But the story doesn't stop at fear. It turns into a demand.